The best way to make sure that you are winning games in College Football 25's Dynasty mode, whether it's online or offline, is dominating through recruiting. And I'm here to show you the best ways to recruit in College Football 25, sponsored by EA. The team I'm using today will be UCF, not a ultra top team, not a bottom team, kind of a team that's a bit in the middle, but a team that has a lot of legway to get into one of the top programs. But let's show how to recruit with UCF. Now, a quick note, whether you're a head coach, offensive coordinator, or defensive coordinator, you will still be doing all the recruiting and all of the gameplay, offense and defense, no matter what. So choose what you want, but I'm going head coach. One of the most important screens you're going to be selecting here on your coach is going to be selecting your backstory. So motivator, which is kind of your ratings, composure, some of the things that are pre-game. Recruiter, which is really about making sure you're getting the proper talent to your school and doing things right. And a tactician, which is really about on the field sort of X's and O's. You can choose whatever you want to choose, but I'm telling you the best option to go with from the start is going to be recruiter. When you're making your coach in College Football 25, an option you're going to have that might be throwing people off a little bit is the pipeline. In old college football games, these were done by state. Now they're done by region. Some regions could be a state, but a lot of times if you have a big state or a popular state like Florida, you're going to have southern, central, northern versions of that state. For us, because we are choosing UCF, we're going Central Florida here. The very first thing you need to do when you're booting up your dynasty, whether it's online or offline, is go to upgrade your coach skills. This is massively important because it really helps set you apart in the early stages of the game. Now, I do also have a video that talks about the best coach abilities and best structure you can have for kind of your spider graph of everything you have here. That's also on my channel, but just know that you cannot max everything out. When you jump into recruiter, it's really important to kind of look at your roster and say, okay, what do we really need? Do we need a quarterback? Do we need some other things? I want to make sure, I know we have a really good quarterback in KJ Jefferson right now, but I want to make sure we are pretty much set for the future. So we will go ahead and do quarterbacks, take less time to scout, put that wherever you want to from what position matters to your specific team, but quarterback's not really a bad one to start with. When you jump into your recruiting board, it's going to be empty, which is good news for you, but you're going to see you have a couple things in the top right. You have your targets, you have your hours, and you have your scholarships. When you're initially setting up your recruiting board, don't do more than like 20-ish people, maybe 25 at maximum, but do not put all 35 on because you're going to get kind of overwhelmed. And the hours you have are pretty much how much time you have to put towards all the recruits you have on your board. Keep in mind, this first week, you're going to have more hours than you will during the regular season because when you're actually playing games, you have less time because your coaches aren't able to go out on the road the whole time. When you do pull the prospect list up, it can be a little overwhelming, I'll be perfectly honest with you, but let's talk about a couple of key areas to pay attention to. The first thing you want to do before you start scanning prospects is clicking in the right stick. That'll bring up your team needs screen. So you can see, for example, we've got a need pretty much everywhere. I mean, center is the one spot that we seem to be pretty fine at, but on offense, we have a lot of areas to fill. And then defensively, okay, so pretty much the whole team. So as you'll see in this column here, beside the position, you'll see the need column. Any player that essentially falls in your need, which is basically my whole team, you're going to see a need option listed there to help make it a little bit easier. The rating that you're going to see is the star rating, which is going to be 1 through 5 for individual prospects. If you're not familiar with that, think of that as a 1 star is kind of, not really that good. And a 5-star is, I need this player on my team now. You have the interest that they have in your particular school. That can be 1 through 8. They could be all, or I guess 1 through 10. That could be off the board as well. The stage, you're going to have open, which means they're considering any and all schools, top 8, top 5, top 3. That means they're only down to their top 8, top 5, or top 3 schools in consideration. If you're not one of those teams, you are locked out and they'll be seeing you later. The state is where they're from. The pipeline influence level is really, really important. This is going to be 1 through 5. The higher that number, the more XP or more interest you can generate from a particular recruit because you have a pipeline area. So with that being said, the one thing I do recommend you do is press Y or triangle when you're on that screen before you add anybody. Go down to your interest in your school and change it to top 3 or top 5. You can do top 5, but I think top 3 is really good to kind of get a sense of what players you have available to you, and then go to top 5 and then work your way to top 8. Kind of work back and get different iterations of recruits to make sure you've got a good swath of people that you can sign. So right now we've went ahead and changed our interest level to top 3. So if I sort by this column, something to note as well is that the game currently does not list it by overall star rating based off the interest. So you'll see, for example, there's a 3-star, there's a 2-star, it goes back to 3 stars. You kind of need to scan through here a little bit to kind of see. I found a 4-star here at the bottom. That's a halfback, Jamie Thrasher, that would probably be a pretty good prospect for our team. So we went ahead and added him, but we'll go ahead and sort our board, find players that we need. You don't want to add a bunch of running backs and a bunch of quarterbacks and call it a day. Try to spread it out across positions that you need. We need everything at UCF. But you want to get a couple of each position and make sure that not all these guys are going to be ones that you want. Try to also maximize guys that have the highest version of your pipeline because that'll give you a really good shot as well. Now, I do have my recruiting board set, but before we jump into that, remember, I chose to have quarterbacks take less time to fully scout, but it's also important to see what your coordinators have. So the offensive coordinator, is going to have that checked also for quarterbacks. So they'll be a little bit quicker even because those abilities stack. He also has it for our running backs, and he gets a recruiting action bonus for running backs. Same thing for wide receivers and tight ends, and you get offensive linemen take a little bit less time to scout. So that's really good news for us because we'll get a lot of benefits across the board, and you kind of want to work with your recruiters or your coordinators to figure out, do I need to spend extra here? Do I want to double down here? Am I covered in this area? Because that's really important. Then our defensive coordinator, he's only going to be focusing on tactician, and then he's going to be focused on motivator, which are both going to be more so on the field and preparatory things. Now, with that out of the way, we can look at Jamie Thrasher, the 4-star running back we kind of identified originally. He's from Miami Gardens. So we have a 3-star pipeline tier for him. If you go ahead and try to scout him to figure out is he good or not, we do our first one here, we do our second one, and then we do our third one to find out that he is actually a bust. Now, in the old NCAA footballs, a bust was a terrible player. But in this one, if you get a bust, this guy's a 4-star. He would actually more so be like a high 3-star or just a 3-star in general. If you were a gem at a 4-star, he'd be a 5-star. So basically, a bust has him go down a rating, a gem has them go up a rating. But that being said, don't fully just look at if they're a bust or gem to decide if they're a great player. You still want to look at their actual attributes to see, do they fit your team and what you're looking for. So this guy, 92 speed and acceleration. His ball carrier vision is kind of low. He's at 79 right there. Awareness is kind of low. But his change direction, juke move, agility, spin move, they're all pretty good in my opinion. So I feel like he still is a worthwhile player to go after. He has road dog, team player, and fan favorite for mentals. And he has the 360 ability, so his spin moves are kind of crazy. And we don't see what his development trait is, unfortunately, but I still feel like he's worth going after. So we'll offer him a scholarship in this first week and then see how things pan out. And funny enough, the second player we actually scouted was a gem. So Tyler Archibald, another running back here. You can see that he's more of a kind of receiving running back. So he's got good speed and acceleration, change of direction is really high. Ball carrier vision is actually lower than what Jamie Thrasher was, but his catching, short route, all those things are probably going to be significantly higher. Only has 1 mental, and then he actually has 2 physicals. He has safety valve and recoup. So solid player, but I would probably still prefer Thrasher in this case, even though this guy's a gem. Some people might ask, are instant recruits in the game? We just found out that they are. So we had this guy right here, Jordan Togai, power back with 92 speed, which is crazy. Acceleration is not too great. We didn't have to put anything into him other than just putting a scholarship out there, and he instantly committed to our school. So you've got that. Now, if we take a look at a corner, which we don't have the less time to scout ability, it's going to take not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 different clicks of our time. So 50 hours in comparison to 30 hours to actually fully scout them. The good news is this guy is actually a gem. His speed and acceleration aren't super great. Zone coverage is okay. Probably a guy that won't start day 1, but again, still worth pursuing. The last thing we'll talk about for this beginning stage is that keep in mind when you're actually scouting players, you're going to reveal different levels of attributes. So you might get, for example, on the first click, you go to C1 rating. So we can see his man coverage is a 78. And everything else is a yellow bar that shows us a range. You can imagine the left side of their bar is 0. The right side of that bar, like acceleration, is going to be 100. His acceleration is probably in like the 70 to 100 range. And if we scout again, the acceleration stays in the same, but play rec gets revealed. We go one more time, acceleration kind of stays in the same area. Now his speed is a 90. We keep looking at acceleration here. Now, finally, as we're 80% of the way, kind of gives us a smaller range within that initial range. So now he's probably in a 75 to 85 range for acceleration. We find out that he's a gem. He's an 88 acceleration. So we feel like this is a good prospect. But you can kind of use those along the way to figure out, is this a guy I really want to actually be targeting? That speed is too low, or his man coverage or zone coverage, or change the direction, whatever it is that you don't like or do like, keep that in mind. You do not need to fully scout a player. You can find out early on, that's not a person I want to pursue. Every week after you advance, you're going to get a couple of different updates. 2 important ones to watch out for are recruiting and my school update. The recruiting update is going to tell you if a player has advanced their recruiting stage. Maybe they went from any to top 8, or top 8 to top 5, or top 5 to top 3. This is a critical thing because it lets you know where your interest level is, as well as where they are in their stage. You can give them extra attention. And then from a my school update standpoint, you kind of see which players are at risk to transfer. So maybe you're seeing somebody is super high in transferring and you're like, well, I can't really bring them back because I'm not going to be able to fix that. You might want to go ahead and start recruiting extra at that position to make sure you're not really having a big gap. And when it comes to figuring out why players are actually transferring, there's actually a really easy way. If you go to your recruiting tab and go over to my school over on the top, you're going to be able to actually look in specifically at what is making them want to transfer. So if we look here, we can look at pro potential, and we're seeing we got a couple of guys at risk. So L Hunter, the defensive tackle, 85 overall, is at a high risk for transfer, as is Lawrence, as is Townsend. And then Zellwood's kind of like a little bit on the fence there. What you want to look at and see, okay, how do we actually improve this? So projected first round picks impact is super high. Second round picks have a high impact. Third round have a medium impact, and 4th to 7th have a low impact. What you basically want to make sure you do at the end of the season is have at least a second rounder, hopefully a first rounder. But the more you have in that top first and second round, the better your chances are to keep these guys. Now, taking a look at our actual recruits, we did have 2 instant recruits in our right tackle and a halfback, but we're still caring about trying to get Jamie Thrasher here. So we are the #1 team for him, as you can see in the top school section. And you're going to see a bar underneath influence. So that bar in the light color, that's how much we have in general before. And then the dark color of the bar is how much we've improved week over week based off the previous actions we've done. So you can see on the right-hand side for action summary, we have, +2 influence because we offered him a scholarship and he seemed to like that. Another important bar to look at here is going to be that gold bar underneath of his name and his star rating. You're seeing that it's moving closer to top 8, which means right now, if it were to go to top 8, FIU would get cut off and everybody else would still be in the running. And then if we go to the recruiting tab, we want to make sure that we kind of have the best recruiting pitches for this guy possible. But each week, as you spend hours on this recruit, up to 50 hours is what we can allocate for him, unless we have recruiting boosts underneath our skill tree. You're going to kind of unlock different things for him. So right now we know he has a proximity to home check mark. He loves proximity to home. That's important, but he doesn't care about coach stability. As you go in here and add different actions like searching social media, DM the player, contact friends and family, send the house, these all have an influence rating to them. Send the house gives you 5. Contact friends and family is 25 hours, gives you 4. DM the player gives you 2, and search social media gives you 1. The heavier your actions are towards a player, the more interest you can potentially gain from them if it's working right. So we're gonna do send the house. That'll give us 50, the maximum time for him. And because we have 50, we will start to learn more and more about his interests. He'll get 3 check marks, everything else will be red, and we gotta hope they kind of align with our school. Something to note as well, let's say you're going through and you accidentally say, I'm gonna DM this player, but you're like, I'd rather actually put 50 points in them. If you just toggle down to where you have active actions, DM player, hold down Y or triangle, you can remove that and go back and add what you wanted to, which maybe here is gonna be send the house. And one of my favorite players we've scouted so far is Badara Dove. This guy's a 4-star, but more importantly, he's got 91 speed, 92 acceleration, 91 throw power. His accuracy is honestly pretty good, I think, across the board here. But more importantly, he has 3 mentals, he has 3 abilities. We don't know what his dev trait ultimately is. I'm gonna go ahead and max out as much as we can in this guy. We're currently 3rd, he's in his top 10. I feel like we got a chance, but Florida is gonna be tough to get by. As you advance each week, you're gonna kind of look around and see that sometimes you don't really have the success with the player that you maybe thought you would. So if we look at Luis Mancuso, we're kind of putting ourselves in a little bit of a tough spot. Miami has a higher pipeline tier by 2 levels. We are doing okay, but we only gave him 25 out of the 50 we could have given him. So we can go in here, remove that. We can add in, go for the full house here, and then we can actually schedule a visit because he's in his top 5 now. So when you're scheduling a visit, you really want to try to focus on getting ones that there's actually a game. If you go to a bye week, you don't really get that extra little boost you could have got if you would have won the game. We have Sam Houston State, where a win would give us 1 tick up, a loss would potentially give us 3. If you go to Colorado, it's a +2 or a -2. Cincinnati is a +3 or a -3. BYU 2-2, Arizona's 2-2, and Utah is a 3-1. Utah might seem like the move, but Miami, because they're already leading and he's in his top 5, moving towards the top 3, you want to get a visit sooner rather than later. So we're going to do week 5. That kind of gives us a good opportunity. And we already know that he cares about coach prestige and proximity to home. We're going to lean into proximity to home because it's an A overall rating, just like the other one. And now we feel like we have a good spot. As soon as we get his 3rd check mark, we can actually go and do a hard sell, but we'll talk about that in a second. When you're on your recruiting board, something I recommend doing too as you progress weeks is to use the left trigger or L2 and kind of scroll around and look at some of these options. Needing a scholarship, not fully scouted, or ready for a visit. That's important too. We can see here that Lawrence, we're currently 5th for him, so we're kind of struggling a little bit. We need a way to kind of juice ourselves up a little bit. We have 40 hours left this week. We're going to use those to schedule a visit. And we're also going to look at doing, I think, Colorado. We need a little bit of a boost. We need to be able to sort of get up there. Cincinnati could be a fun one too. But we're going to try to do one sooner rather than later. But the problem is here, we don't actually know anything that he cares about. So we're actually going to hold off now that I look at it and not do a visit yet because we need to see what he actually cares about so we don't mess up his visit. So instead, we're going to look at Tremaine Pleasance, who we already know what he cares about. We're going to go to Colorado. He gets a boost here because athlete Luis Mancuso is going to be there. So it's a complimentary visit. And we're going to schedule him for that game against Colorado. Now we know proximity to home is his 1 check mark. We can do that. Know that he's going to have a great visit. And then Lawrence we can do in the following week. Now, as we kind of advance weeks, we talked about that recruiting update screen. You can see here that we're doing really well. We've got a lot of guys right now, and we are 1st overall for them. And that makes me feel really good. We have a deal breaker here with one guy needing a coach prestige to be above a B-. We have an A coach prestige because, we're out here winning games and doing well. And our offensive and defensive coordinators also impact that too. But this is a good spot to be in. Guys moving down across their stages and you still being first overall for their interests. And don't forget, as you're winning games, as you're kind of pulling off some victories here and there, unlocking some goals, you're going to get more coach points you can go ahead and throw back in on particular players. So we're going to use this one on recruiting actions, have bigger impacts on quarterbacks. And we're going to also increase the weekly hours for quarterbacks. And then we're going to look at wide receivers taking less time to scout and defensive backs taking less time to scout as well. Now, I talked about complimentary visits earlier, but here we are trying to schedule Badara Dove in for a week 5 visit. But as you can tell, athlete Luis Mancuso, who would also be a quarterback, is kind of not feeling that. So we would not want to do that, even though we would get a complimentary boost from Tremaine Pleasance. So we're going to focus more on Cincinnati for him and get him in during that week. We know he cares about coach prestige, so we'll go ahead and use that one as the one-on-one coaching option, and we feel good. We also, because we upgraded some things here, have more hours we can spend on this particular player. So we're going to DM him, and then we're also going to go ahead and search social media to kind of boost him up a little bit, and that should help us get a leg up on Florida State, who's already starting to creep up on us some. And when we kind of look at Luis here, things are getting a little spicy. We have a visit in week 5, but he's going in week 3 to visit Miami. They have that recruiting pipeline a little bit. I kind of feel like this is dead in the water at this stage. We could potentially go and try to do a hard sell, which I think we can try to risk at this point. We only know 2 out of the 3 options that he has. We have a quarterback we like, but you never know what's going to happen. Actually, let's try to sway him on something. We're going to try to sway him here because we have an A in proximity home, coach prestige, and an A- in conference prestige. We're going to try to sway him with prestigious. Sometimes that can work and make things better, but that only is 30 hours total. So we're going to go ahead and add 25 more there, and then we'll add 10 more. So we're going to get him completely maxed out, and hopefully that takes away a little bit from Miami. And as we get our weekly advanced summary, we felt pretty good. We lose out on Lawrence. We didn't get to schedule him in time, but the big one we lose out on is Luis Mancuso, who, again, we were right there, but Miami, that pipeline tier definitely helped them out a ton. And with a little bit of hard work and a little bit of luck and mostly skill, you can actually go ahead and get a 4-star QB prospect to a team like UCF with some dedication. When you find yourselves with a prospect like Nola Milanovic, who you're sitting there thinking, I feel pretty good, but I'm starting to see Wake Forest creep up a little bit and I don't like it. If you've gotten to a point where you found all 3 green check marks, we have academic prestige, coach prestige, and proximity to home, this is where you want to remove something like send the house, and you want to dive a little bit deeper. You want to go to something like hard sell, and then you want to see if you can find something that will line up all 3 of those pitches with what you have is actually green. A lot of times you'll find something like you did here. There are occasions where you won't, and you got to get a little crafty at that point. Your goal is with any hard sell is to find as many green pitches as you possibly can with having a pretty good rating. If you have something that's green for him, but you have an F for that rating, either try to sway them or just don't use it. Looking at a guy like Devontae Toney, same kind of thing. Wake Forest is moving on up. We don't like that, so we're going to try to see if we can hedge them out of here. So Cincinnati, we have 2 complimentary visits for him, Badara and Jamie Thrasher. So that'll also help them by having him visit as well. So we're going to do, I believe, proximity to home. That'll be an A+ rating for him. And then we're also going to double down a little bit more. We're going to remove friends and family, DM the player, and social media. We're going to see if there's a hard sell that potentially could work to try to stave off maybe a little bit of what we're seeing from Wake Forest. So here we see coach prestige, conference prestige, and proximity to home under prestigious will be the right strategy. We'll add 10 points back to give us the maximum 50 out of 50 for him, and then we'll feel pretty good going into the next week that we should be able to move ahead a lot. And by changing our pitch around, doing the hard sell, and working really hard at what we're doing and paying attention, we're able to land a guy like Jamie Thrasher. Now, if you remember from the previous week, Nola Milanovic was kind of getting close to having Wake Forest maybe kind of overtaking us, but as you can see now, that changed significantly. If you look at what we did week over week on the action summary, the student of the game hard sell worked incredibly well, and we're actually kind of cooking right now. So this feels like a guy that will probably land in the following week. Now, looking at Marco Handy, we're finding ourselves in a situation where Miami actually overtook us. We just scheduled a visit for week 10. They have a higher pipeline. You can see week over week, they're doing significantly better. So we removed our send the house, and we're actually going to go down to hard sell again, and we're going to look and see what we have. Now, if you notice, he has 2 green check marks, coach prestige and proximity to home, but his other one is academic prestige because it's the only one that's a question mark. It hasn't turned green. Knowing that we have 2 out of the 3 with only 1 spot left, we know that's going to be the option. So we're going to try to find something with academic prestige, coach prestige, and proximity to home. This is a little bit of a different one. I don't know if we're going to be able to find one that has that, and I'm wrong. We do. Student of the game is what we're going to do. So we're going to use that. Again, that's 40 out of 50. We're going to DM the player to give us a little bit more influence here, and hopefully that can go attack Miami and see if we can make something happen. So going through our board, Milanovic is looking really good right now. We're in first. We feel like we're going to lock him up pretty soon. Marco Haney was the other guy. Remember, we were actually behind Miami. Now, week over week, we did significantly better. Our student of the game, Hartzell, did incredible for him. So we feel like we're in a really good spot. But because I know that I have coach abilities available to me, I have 10 coach points right now. I'm going to go in here and go to defensive back and increase weekly recruiting hours for defensive backs. That to me is going to be important because I definitely need to make sure that I load up on that, because I need and land Marco Handy. So with that in place, we can come right back here. Instead of having just 50 hours available, we have 65 available for him now. So we can actually go through here and remove DM a player, and just doing the quick math, we can add contact, friends, and family to max us out at 65. That should hopefully give us the edge we need. With a visit coming up soon, we can get Miami out of the picture. As you start to land more and more recruits, I also recommend going back in, looking at specific positions you aren't really happy with or need some more people in, and start adding those guys in. You will find gems of people that maybe haven't been scouted yet. Maybe they're good, maybe they're bad. You'll find out. They don't really have any offers. We found the 244th player on the board, a wide receiver, Kevin Schweitzer. This guy doesn't have a single offer on the table. He does have a deal breaker though. Coach Prestige needs to be at least a B-. We have an A, so I feel good from that front. But this is a guy you definitely want to add and take a shot at. And taking a closer look at Kevin Schweitzer, I feel really good about this potential prospect. He's 6'5", 205, 94 speed, 94 jump, 81 short route, 90 acceleration, 85 spectacular catch, and 81 catch in traffic. He has 3 mental abilities and 1 physical ability. I don't know what his development trait will ultimately be, but this is a guy worth the scholarship. Now, the battle we have for Marco Handy might be coming to an end. Even though we've been trying as much and we've been doing so many good things, what might be hurting us overall is the fact that Miami has a 5-tier pipeline and we only have a 3-tier pipeline. We're doing as much as we can. We've maxed out all of our points. We have a really good pitch that landed really strongly with him, but it might just be too much. We're hoping our visit is a little bit for him. We'll have that, I believe, in week 10, but outside of that, it's up in the air. And while we're doing so well with so many prospects, at the end of the day, we do lose out on Marco Handy. But again, it just shows you pipeline tiers matter an incredible amount. You can have a couple of tiers below and fight, but at the end of the day, if they put in their full force, you might just be outmatched. Don't forget, as you're going through the final pieces of your season, to go back through your team needs and make sure that you have the guys signed that you need to be signed. You can see the quarterback and halfback, we're in a good spot at that point. Fullback, wide receiver, there's still some work to be done. Offensive line, we're still trying to land a couple of guys as well. Defense, though, I don't have anybody targeted for defensive tackle. I need linebackers across the board, so I've kind of let that slip through the cracks. I got to make sure we get some of those guys in. While recruiting in the regular season is great, the transfer portal can change your life. Now, keep in mind, just because a player goes in the transfer portal doesn't mean they actually want to come play for you. They might have needs that are met by other teams or just not interested in your school from the jump. I do think, though, the same thing we talked about at the very beginning, triangle or Y, and just making sure you go to interest in school. Try your top 3 when you're looking at the transfer portal at first. See what you're kind of looking out there. There's a really good running back, then a really good receiver. Kind of compare the other schools that are also talking to them. We could definitely beat out Wake Forest, I feel like, in this situation. A left tackle, a left guard. And you kind of want to reevaluate the board of prospects you currently have in your recruiting board and say, do I want to potentially move some of these other guys off of here? Can they sign sooner? But players in the transfer portal are very similar to what you're going to do in the high school portal as well. As you're going to go in here, you're going to actually scout these players at their positions. So you're going to see what they basically have. You can see 88 speed, 92 excel, pretty solid ratings overall. I'd offer him a scholarship at this point. We have tons of hours, so we can kind of max out and send the house at that point. And something to keep in mind is that with any of these players, you are definitely going to have to go through and learn everything about them like you would a high school player. Like, just because we're sending the house doesn't mean we're going to know anything. As you can see, they have question marks on every single motivation right now. Keep in mind that when you're looking at the high school prospects, you were still trying to land in your team, they are going to reset back to 0 hours week over week. So you need to go back in. I recommend also trying to schedule their visits here in week 1, because in the following weeks, you're going to be needing to use those for any transfers you're trying to land last minute. So here, for example, you're selecting one option. We're going to use Coach Prestige, as we had a really good season. We lost in the national championship, but we're going to send the house. Actually, we're going to sell to a hard sell here as well, because we know what his 3 things are. So we're going to look for athletic facilities, Coach Prestige, and Conference Prestige. We found those, and we will absolutely use that. Plus, contact friends and family, because we can use up to 65 hours for an athlete. This particular time, he's going to be like a defensive end or defensive tackle. Look, I'm not going to lie to you. Recruiting takes a lot of work, but if you take your time to recruit during the season, recruit during all 4 weeks of the transfer portal, and really look at what your team needs and what you should be putting on your program, you can turn a program around. I was able to get all 35 scholarships filled this year. We have a variety of 4 stars and 3 stars. Didn't really go after any 5 stars, because I wanted to go after more depth and special talent. And I think we got a lot of that. You kind of look across the board here. there's a lot of big time players, and we kind of work our way down here to the transfer portal. We got some guys as well that I think will help us out. Anthony Hankerson could be a guy that helps us out with depth. Traylon Ray is going to be there. We really did what we needed to, but how do we rank as a top class? What you're going to find for a lot of the top classes is they have a ton of 5 stars. Anything from 2 to 4 is going to be crazy, and so you're going to be weighted at the top. And Georgia got 34 stars. But a team like Georgia can do that. We ended up netting around 23 for UCF, and I feel like that's honestly pretty good. 6 4 stars, 28 3 stars, 1 2 star. Again, I would have loved a 5 star. It would have definitely helped us out. And we got close on a couple, but at the end of the day, this is what you need. Tons of depth for your program. And as a little bonus, when you get into the offseason, you go to position changes. One thing you want to do is there's actually not a roster option to go ahead and change to find the athletes like there was in the old one. So you need to sort by position using X or square. And if you hit it 2 times, you'll see all of your athletes listed right here. You just simply go into them. You can look and see what positions they are. So for example, Badara Dove, we can see that he would be a 74 overall scrambling quarterback or an 80 or a 73 overall halfback. We obviously rather play him at quarterback where he belongs. And you'll simply just go in and keep repeating that process to figure out where these guys maybe fit best. You're going to find that there are different holes in your program that really need to have some of these added depth positions. But again, simply tapping X or square twice will give you that. You can figure out where they ultimately play the best, and that is really what you need to make sure you do. Make sure you don't let the computer switch them out, because if you have a particular spot you wanted to put them in, the CPU is probably going to put them in where the biggest need is and where their highest overall is instead. And to give you a look at one of our transfers, Hankerson was a massive get for us. Yes, we have an overall 83 guy that's going to be starting a running back, but Hankerson coming in at a 79 overall makes sure that we have a really nice 1-2 punch. If you want to know where Badara Dove ended up being, he ended up being a really good 74 overall, 91 speed guy that should be an absolute stud. And at any point, if you actually view the player card of a player, you can see what their development trait would be. So Hankerson, for example, who we pulled in, would be a development trait of impact. Recruiting can change your program overnight in a positive way or a negative way, but if you follow the tips that I gave you, you too can have a top 25 class just like that. Be safe, be smart, tell somebody you love them. Catch you guys on the next one.